Hello, my name is Justin Bright, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. And we are picking up right where we left off. Lisa Kim has completed her rest period. She has about 2% radiation, but is otherwise doing just fine on the lunar surface and is ready to step out and be the first Kerbal to set foot on the surface of the moon. So alright, here we go, just getting ready to EVA. Make sure that the nitrogen is loaded. Yes, we do have nitrogen. Fabulous. She can spend about 9 hours out here on the surface, although the radiation rate is probably a little bit higher. Oh, no. Oh, no. I can't crawl past this RCS. Come on. There we go. But I was able to... Oh, no. Oh, come on, Springs. Hold on for me, please. Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's really stupid of me. Okay. Yeah, so this RCS being here, you can't actually climb over that very well. Like, the Kerbal is kind of like their collision mesh is a little bit through that. So I was able to exert, like, imaginary Kraken forces on the spacecraft, and I nearly knocked the damn thing over, which would have just been tragic. And transferring from ladder 1 to ladder 2, and here we go. Spacebar to let go, and we are here on the surface of the moon, waddling in a very silly fashion. All right, man, this is so cool. We are here. We've done it. Where's the Earth? There it is, directly above us, giving us good signal if nothing else, although no Earthrise picture for us from the surface anyways. But here she is, Lisa Kim, out on the surface, doing a whole bunch of science. EVA report is going to get us just hundreds of science, it looks like. We are surface sampling even as we speak. But yeah, she is doing work, getting the science done. And yeah, here we go. Let's figure out where to put down our surface, our flag. Here it comes. Extend the pole, and boom, glittering in the lights, the RP-1 flag has been planted. One small step for us. The next small step to come. Yes, indeed, here we go. We have done it. Landed on the surface of the moon. Flag is planted, science underway. Let's get this screenshot lined up because that's very, very cool. And there we go. So yeah, I have never actually done, oh, that's a fun little animation. I have never done a lunar landing of a crew on any other body in RP-1. So this is brand new to me and just so cool. And it was a long road to get here, I can tell you that. Getting to this point, learning how to play, learning how to work within the constraints, and then finally break past those constraints as you start to get more technology was just an incredible challenge, and I love RP-1 for that. So this has been quite the journey to get to this point. But so long as we get home safely, this is going to be one of the big milestones of my career that I had been hoping to do. This is indeed, as I put down on the flag, one small step for man. As Neil Armstrong said when he first set foot upon the surface, this is indeed one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Just going to talk about the great spirit of humanity that it took to get to that point, and the amazing accomplishment that it was, not just for him as a person, not just for Lisa Kim as a Kerbal, but for the entire space program and all of humanity indeed, for getting us to that point and finally moving ourselves to the point where we can make this amazing accomplishment of setting foot on another body. So very, very cool, very exciting. And this is, like I said, one of the major accomplishments of our career so far. There is only one thing left at this point. There is a couple of additional contracts that we are going to have on here for, what do you call it? For setting up lunar bases, for bringing down lunar rovers, and having the Apollo lunar rover to fly around on, or drive around on. God, I hope not fly around. But yeah, those are things that we will be doing on the moon. But this is basically it for the moon. Like, after this, it is diminishing returns, as I understand it. There should probably be a couple big money makers that we can do here for now, but that is you know, the best is going to be, or the next best thing is going to be when we finally get to Mars. So we have our surface samples and so forth. We're just running this last one here. Very good. But yes, so that is, as I mentioned, we have one small step for us here on the moon. The next small step is going to be moving on to Mars. And so now everything has shifted. So this was a big milestone push to get a Kerbal on the moon and plant that flag and then return them home safely, which, you know, fingers crossed that that's going to happen. But once we have done that, the next step is going to be bringing people to Mars. And so everything that we do here now, at every space station, every lunar base on the surface, all of that is going to be in service of going towards the objective of getting towards Mars. So that is the big shift in our space program that is going to be happening now. So yeah, that is pretty much that. All right. Lisa Kim has collected the science. She's able to leap above the surface, having a great time, bringing out her EVA pack, which, by the way, does not actually, the little nitrogen thrusters on this does not actually lift you off the surface. So I sincerely hope that I'm going to be able to get past this RCS quad without blowing up the ship or knocking the damn thing over. So yeah, now it's time for her to get back on board and to start preparing her reports. There's unfortunately not a whole lot of activities in science to do out on the surface of the moon. Maybe there's more science things that we could be doing, but it's not like the breaking ground expansion of stock KSP, where there's lots of little fidgety things that you can do out here, or even with Kerbal attachment system, Kerbal inventory system, where you can deploy science experiments that you can boop and touch out here on the surface. So that is going to be it for this particular EVA, and we are headed back. But after playing with this a few times, it's a little bit dangerous. Like, I keep pushing on it a lot, and I think I found a way to make it so that I don't knock this whole darn spacecraft over on this attempt because of the weird way the RCS was placed. So let's give this a shot. I've locked the suspension on these back two legs with the hope that I can just get past it. There we go. Okay. Looks like we're okay. I'm going to unlock the suspension and continue our climb up and board the damn spacecraft. Gosh, that was really silly. Okay, so I'm going to transfer all the data into this crew module. It looks like we are transferring it out, just like sending it up on our, because we have direct connection with our big S-band antenna, and we have sent back. This is the greatest experience it's just tremendous. But that is that. We are here and ready to settle in while Lisa Kim works on her reports before we head back. So now let's think about how we are going to get back up to the Gemini spacecraft, which is halfway around in orbit. So I think the way to do this is we want it to... So we're not going to be able to get into an orbit that is lower than it. So we're not going than the Gemini. So we're not going to want to get into a what do you call it? We're not going to want to wait for it to get ahead of us. So we're going to want to actually get into an orbit that is a little bit higher. So we're talking like 35 kilometers, and we're going to want to do it when it is just behind us. So that is when we are going to launch the Ascent module and head back up for that. One thing I want to double check is to see if I actually took single crewed lunar orbit. Looks like yes, we have. So we do need to get into this this orbit and hold it for 20 hours after we launch, so that we can get this contract finished as well. All right, so we're just time warping now around so that our fellow spacecraft is behind us a little ways, and I think now it's time for us to head up into that orbit. So we're going to want to fly up in not a direct 90-degree trajectory, but just along the line of the plane of our target. So that's it for this, however. So we've transferred all the science up, and we are otherwise all ready to go. Everything is finished as far as we are going to finish it, I believe. Look at this, look at our data. Yep, we are doing 30 days of magnetic scan and all of that, but I don't think I actually need to leave. Oh, wait, hold on. Yes, let's see. Oh, okay. So I left a science core for avionics on here, but it just occurs to me that I didn't leave any kind of transmitter on it. So it's not going to, I do have science that is going to be done on these, but we're not going to get that science, right? So yeah, that's a shame, unless, and I literally cannot leave people here for 14 days. She would die. So we're definitely not going to kill her for chasing after 70 science. That doesn't seem really worthwhile. So we are just about prepared. And so now, let's see, that's all set. All right. And all that's left is rendezvousing with our, with the Gemini 8L. So, kind of nervous to do this, but here we go. 3, 2, 1, ignition. And we are up and away. We have separated from our the mothership there, and now it's time to begin our journey up to the Gemini spacecraft. So, I unfortunately don't have any kind of launch assistance or direction assistance or anything, so this is going to be kind of a janky launch. I'm sure people who actually know what they're doing are going to be cringing really hard at how I'm doing this, but yeah, that's what it is, you know. But we are heading off roughly eastward, hopefully in the inclination that we are. You can see we are kind of heading in that inclination. And yeah, any extra corrections is something that I think that the what do you call it? Our Gemini L is going to be able to do. This does not have a whole lot of delta V, but that should be okay. So I am just tilting this down, and we want to pass through this because I want to keep our relative inclination as low as possible. You can see that relative inclination number dropping. There's been a little bit of rotation of the moon while we have been here, so you can see that we have a little bit of separation between the orbit of the Gemini L and our own Apolloon. But yeah, so we are just kind of heading up in this direction, and these are just 4 3.6 kilonewton generic thrusters that are also burning kerosene and NTO. That got us the thrust to weight ratio and the delta V that I was looking for. There's a little bit of quite a lot of gravity losses on this, but it shouldn't be so bad. But yeah, and this worked out fine in our dress rehearsal, but it was a much jankier rendezvous because I kind of did it backwards. But yeah, we are now heading straight up in the direction that we are intended to be, and we want to try to catch up as fast as possible before this thing gets out ahead of us. Because like I said, we want to get into a 35 or so kilometer orbit, and then let the let the Gemini catch up to us underneath. So while we are doing all of this, it is hurtling towards us at 1,600 meters per second, and that is going to hopefully put these relatively close when we finally get into orbit. It's not going to be quite exact because I didn't, put a timer or do any kind of math on figuring out when an optimal time to launch would be, but this should be fine. I'm not stressed about it. Let's see, how can I reduce my relative inclination? If I go up a little bit, that does reduce it. That's good. There we go. 0.22, I love it. 0.21, okay, coming back up, so let's go ahead and point orbital prograde. There we go, and we are just coming up, and now I'm just trying to... We are burning pretty much horizontal now and trying to increase our orbital velocity. I think I'm going to pitch us up a little bit because I want this orbit to be a little bit higher. All right, just using time warp a little bit now. We still have 1,200 meters per second of delta V, so we are looking pretty darn good. Apolloon is 35 kilometers, and I am cutting the engines for just a moment. And let's bring up the maneuver planner and see what a circularization at our Apolloon would look like. 616 meters per second of delta V. And it would give us a bit of a meeting there. So let's see. I have 30 seconds before I have to actually start. Intercept. Actually makes the intercept worse. Sort of better. Okay. So yeah, there we go. We are just about ready. Oops. Circularize, create, and execute. Go! Fabulous. So yeah, we want to. I want to circularize here because we are 0.31 degrees relatively inclined to each other, and we are going to be basically just above them. So that is going to mean that because we are in a slightly higher orbit, they are going to slowly catch up on us over the course of an orbit or two, and that is exactly what I'm looking for. So once they have caught up, then we are going to be able to have these two vessels couple up once again, and that is going to be that for our lander. Then we'll be able to discard the lander and bring home our astronauts. So yeah, for the most part, this is actually following, at this point, it is now following the mission profile of Apollo pretty closely, because there's no real issue with like the light lander that meets up with the orbital module is exactly the way that Apollo did that. And like I said, I'll talk through the history of that another time when I'm actually doing something a little bit more similar. But yeah, for now, this is what I am looking at. So what I can do is I can actually just wait. If I just do this and just minus a couple 5 meters per second so that we get down to, oops, maybe that's a little too much. Yeah, just like -1 so that we get down into that orbit, and then you can see +1 orbit, +2, +3, nothing? Okay. Oh, that's just circularize the orbit. I don't know. -1 orbit, and then we are going to +1, and you can see it just slowly catches up on us over the course of a bunch of orbits. So what I can do now is I can actually, in 3 minutes time, increase our orbit a little bit at the point of our intercept. Okay, so what that means is that's going to increase the time that we are on orbit and the amount that the Gemini L is catching up on us. So I'm doing basically the inverse of what I did last time. Let's go ahead and execute next node. We still have 386 meters per second of delta V, which is fabulous. That was actually an even smoother launch than I did last time. When you're not trying to, when you're actually doing this with a little bit of math, that actually does help quite a bit. All right, and just raising our orbit slightly to help the chase. There we go. I'm just using RCS now, killing rotation, and you can see I'm reducing our separation by quite a bit. Point us prograde. Then just watch this come down. And also our relative speed is coming down too, which is great. And there we go. Now we have mostly done that, so I will fix that when we come back around in just a couple of hours, which will be just fine. We have days worth of fuel and oxygen and everything else. So there we go. You can see that it has caught up on us. It is directly below us at this point. All right, just like before, we are just changing things up a little bit. Ooh, man, just whips around, doesn't it? Changing up our orientation to fix our closest approach. Actually making our closest approach a lot worse. All right, so with just a little bit of futzing around, we have a 800 meter separation at closest approach that is coming up in just a couple of minutes. We go. We are coming in. Can't actually see our target. It should be right here. 2 minutes. It should be coming in close. Kind of see it as a speck. Should have been physics loading. There it is. All right, closest approach is coming up very soon, just 15 more seconds. And I am going to cut a lot of this velocity because it is not actually helpful. Now, let's just change that up a bit. Now we're close enough to just push the retrograde marker onto our target marker. And that gets us, as you can see, a nice, very close approach. With 200 meters per second of delta V2 spare. Fantastic. All right, parallel minus, and we are actually going to be able to make this entire capture with the lunar this lunar capsule here, the landing module, which is great. I thought I was going to have to do this in my dress rehearsal. I had to do this with the what do you call it? Mostly with the lunar lander because I ran out of delta V. So just cut our relative velocity. There we go. At force roll, 90 degrees. 90 degrees. Negative 90 degrees. That seems to be swinging us around correctly. Fabulous. And there we go. And this thing actually is pretty zippy on its feet here because this thing is only about 1 ton. 1.8 tons at this point with all the fuel used and everything else, so it's moving fairly quickly. So yeah, this thing moves really zippy even though it has basically the same configuration of thrusters. Alright, so we are pushing now because I just flew right past. Yeah, I am moving in a very rapid and undisciplined way. We still have a meter per second of relative velocity that I should fix before I really make a serious attempt at approaching. The lander can window looks out the side and down, not up, so there's really no use to doing that. But all things considered, and all silliness aside, it winds up being the exact same game of just lining up all these little lines and using part minus to put that big orange circle right dead center, which is just fantastic And here we go. We are coming in now for a docking at 0.13 meters per second. Slow that down just slightly. And ka-chunk. We have a hard dock. The lunar lander has joined up and we are back. Let's move all of the data, all the surface samples into the Gemini command pod. And Lisa Kim, it is time for you to get the hell off of that thing before I throw it at the surface. There we go. So, fantastic. Fantastic. This has gone so well. I'm so happy. So long as, well, I'm not even going to say what I was about to say about counting my chickens before they're hatched and all that. But yeah, we are now just about ready to come home. So putting Lisa Kim back in the spacecraft so we can watch this as we are flying over the surface. Make sure we get all the screenshots that we could possibly want. And there we go. We have done it. We have landed on the moon. All the data inside the Gemini capsule. We have landed on the moon and safely brought our Kerbals back into the Gemini spacecraft. All that is left now is to bring them home, but one thing we are not going to need is our lovely Mark 1 lander, which can now just head on down towards the surface. That's right, we can deorbit. So I just push that until we have a paraloon that is below the surface, and then there we go. It is off, it is away. Farewell, you have served us very well indeed, and now it's time to bring them home. All right, we are time warping ahead as the lunar lander module impacts the surface, cleaning up that debris. We are headed off towards a trajectory that is going to bring Thomas Reed and Lisa Kim back home after their... Oop, actually, hold on. Stop. Yep, just stop. I just remembered, before we come home, I need to spend another 11 and a half hours in lunar orbit so that we can finish up that second contract, for goodness sake. All right, that contract has just completed, and we now have two different things, two different contracts that want us to return home safely, and I think that sounds like a grand idea. All right, ullaging up, and here we go. We are burning back towards home, out of the sphere of influence of the moon, wrapping up a fantastically successful mission so far, except for the part where Lisa Kim almost shoved over the entire 1.5 ton, 2 ton, well, more than 2 tons at that point, multiple ton spacecraft with her own brute strength on the surface of the moon because she couldn't get past an RCS quad. So that will, inform my next version of this design. But yeah, so this is otherwise just gone so well, and I'm really happy and really excited about it. So with this burn complete, we should be just about set, such that there's not a whole lot more, unless I very badly botch the re-entry. We are on our way back home safe. As we head away, I really can't help but feel like this has been a really good and fitting end to the Gemini program. I'm just rotating around here to manage temperature. That's something that we don't actually really have to worry about, but it's theoretically, it's not theoretically, but it's something that the Apollo program definitely did have to do. They did a barbecue roll on the way in between Earth and the moon to manage temperatures. And so we'll just say that's kind of what we're doing here. But yeah, a fitting end for my Gemini program. There might be some more flights of the Gemini, but like I said, let me know what you think, if I should just keep flying Gemini for cheaper access to space, or if I should move to Mark 1-3 after I introduce Apollo, because it uses the same training and everything, but there's a huge discount for using it, but it also looks a little bit more modern and everything else. Let's kill this rotation as we time warp a little bit further away, coming away from the moon. We've definitely seen this before, but it means a lot more now that we have had the rendezvous, dock, and descent of a spacecraft to land on the moon and then return from there. But yeah, let me know what you think about what spacecraft I should use for space station missions, essentially, because that's really what the question is what do I use to get to and from the space stations that I'm going to be building in orbit of the moon and in orbit of Earth, because I'm thinking about having like a common berthing adapter where there's a Gemini access point and then also an Apollo access point. Like, that's one way to do it. Yeah, so it's a matter of just determining what kind of access to space that we have for our crew. I'm not likely to build a space shuttle because you saw how bad I am with planes, but there's no reason to subject you guys to that again. But yeah, there's the ongoing problem of how do I get astronauts into space to work on the space station and back and to do those further missions, and whether I do that with Apollo architecture or Gemini architecture, it doesn't really matter, or not either Apollo or Gemini architecture, or if I use the generics, which might be a lot cheaper, which would make me happy anyways, because that means they build a lot faster. But here we go. We are coming back in. We are just dead on target, so I don't even need to burn this extra 1,000 meters per second of delta V. I can just kick off this stage and not have any kind of problem. But there we go. That's actually a really cool shot. As we return Thomas Reed and Lisa Kim back home, we are coming down almost to the top of the atmosphere. 150, 140, there we go. And this is a good a place as any for us to boot off the service module. There we go. And once again, we are now doing the whole thing to bring us down properly. And just like before, we are getting just aligned, and this is now moving off in a random direction, which is perfect. At about 100 kilometers, we flip on descent mode and turn off pitch control. Boom, 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 boom. All right, so I am now just kind of monitoring my... There we go. So we are monitoring our vertical speed. Whoa, be careful about that. I think I wiggled enough. Still rotation. Nope, still doing pitch. So yeah, just trying to hold us at a point where we are going to lower our vertical speed, and then as soon as our vertical speed gets down pretty darn low to like -100, I'm going to turn descent mode off, and then we can actually just rotate around. Or actually, that's what I could do first, really. So yeah, we're coming back, still at 10 kilometers per second, moving incredibly quickly. So I'm going to now turn this on, and we are going to pitch us off 180 degrees, go. Said go. No? Not going to do that for me? Okay. Well, I'll do it manually then. We'll just turn that off, and I'm just rotating this around. To point us back up into the airstream to keep us in that same band and lower the increase of our vertical speed so we don't bounce off the atmosphere any more than we have to. And like I've mentioned, like this is basically how they did re-entries. They did it like this, where they were just like kind of pointed in the airstream, rolled a controlled roll thrust manually. I want to say that there was an automated program, but I think they also had the option to do this manually because there was a lot of problems that they had in this part of the space program, in both Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo, in trying to get their astronauts back home safely. But yeah, like there's no smartass that like exactly holds you on a particular target. Like it's all a lot of like just doing the best you can and approximating and all of that. So yeah, we have managed to keep our vertical speed at a pretty low band here. We are just coming down from 30 meters per second going upwards, about to head back down once again, which means that, yeah, we had a nice easy ride back in. And now that we are there, I am going to once again flip it over and then ride this back down as such. Yeah, and because the Airstream kind of holds you in this orientation and it wants to do this ballistic thing, then it's actually really easy to not use a ton of your re-entry fuel, doing it just manually, which is really nice. Like I had been doing it with this surface velocity thing, but it always seems to fight with me. But yeah, this is actually not so bad. And now we are going back. See that our velocity is changing again, and we are just like held right here. Lift has kept us right at the same altitude for a really long time as we have scrubbed off 3,000 meters per second of delta V. All right, now we are on the final part of our descent, and I'm just using the lifting part of the re-entry to keep the G-forces from getting too high. We should expect somewhere between 6 and 8, but anything higher than that means I've done my job wrong. There we go. You can see us getting up over 5, getting up to about 6. But that lifting re-entry keeps our velocity relatively low and the re-entry very comfy. Let's turn descent mode off, turn everything off, and we are good to go. And pop our drogue, oops, not our drogue chute. I think I had these backwards. Whoops. Oh well. So we popped our main parachute and we are now coming down. All right, and so we are now completing the Advanced Gemini concept of the last type that we are going to be exploring, the lunar landing. We didn't quite use a Langley lunar light lander, but we did use something that was kind of similar, kind of a halfway in between this and that. But we are the Gemini concept and also Apollo. And that is it. That is where we are finishing up our Gemini program for the most part. But we have done what we otherwise would have done, and it got us the same benefits that it got Gemini, where it got us finished with the lunar landing long before we would have been able to do so. We were able to do this in 1975, which again is about 6 years late, but it to get a proper lunar landing for us with the technology that I have and everything that I have ready, we were still a little ways off, probably another year or two to research the technology, unlock stuff, tool the rockets, test it out, and all of that. And so that would have been it would have been a ways off for me still, which I think all the water just disappeared, which is neat. We are only 600 meters above the surface right now, so but yeah, it got us there early and it accomplished those objectives. And this is just fantastic. It has been a fantastic bit of fun. I've never been this far, and that obviously means I've never been any further than this, but I am very excited to continue on towards our final objective of having done one small step on the moon. We are headed out now to do the next small step on Mars, and everything that we do from now on is in preparation of that. So here we go. Cheers to Thomas Reed and Lisa Kim, our returning heroes, astronauts who have landed on the surface of the moon and returned splashdown into the invisible water to tell the tale. Contracts complete. The first human moon landing. Congratulations, you have done it. Human beings have set foot on another planetary body for the first time in our history. This is a monumental occasion, and you should be proud of your achievement, and I gotta tell you, I am. This has been a huge undertaking, and I'm really happy to have done it. Crew is alive and well after the mission. Congratulations. All right, 900 days for Thomas Reed, 1,200 days for Lisa Kim. They find that mission fairly exciting, one would hope. We have returned a good 96 science from samples on the moon. Fabulous. Thomas Reed is advanced to level 2. Lisa Kim is just hanging out. She's ready to go, and we are back up to 4 million funds, and we will play with that just shortly. But first, we have 17 upgrade points to allocate, and that's all going into the vehicle assembly building at this point. 7.7 and 6.1. We are really getting to build these things faster, which is great, because in the future we have Apollo, and we also have 3 Hermes spacecraft, which are going to be essentially based a little bit on the Messenger spacecraft that are heading out to all sorts of planets with all of our new tracking station technology and the new science experiments and everything else we have. We cannot be missing all of these transfer windows. So yeah, whew, man, this is a new era, and I'm excited to dig into it. All right, so with that all completed, we've finally brought home Lisa Kim and Thomas Reed. So you can see here that we have those 2 are inactive, but we have a whole bunch of astronauts now that are all ready to go, and most of which are actually trained up on Apollo spacecraft. So going forward, I think that's kind of where we're at. So looking through our tech tree real quick, we have improved landing engines coming. One of the big features of that is going to be the lunar roving vehicle, which will go up on one of our Apollo missions. Better life support, space station development, and those 2 combined are going to give us the technology that we need to build better space stations. Same thing with surface science, because it's going to give us more scientific experiments we can do to really accelerate our production of that. And then we do we're getting the big unlocks, the material science, electronics research, more experiments, more avionics, et cetera, et cetera. And we're kind of going down in that direction, just a lot of different things here. Other interesting things to note early on in the next couple hundred days is multi-100 watt RTGs, which is going to really help enable deep space probes and vessels, better communications, and early nuclear propulsion. So early nuclear propulsion is going to be nuclear thermal rockets that are going to really help us to do deep space work, both probes and also vessels that might be going back and forth from Mars, because I might want to get like some kind of reusable shuttle or space station that goes back and forth between Mars and Earth. And I have kind of an inkling of an idea of using the Buzz Aldrin Earth-Mars cycler orbit, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. That's still in the foundation stages of a plan there. But yeah, better nuclear propulsion is what we're going to need for that. And then immediately after that is improved capsules, which is going to get us the Apollo Block 3 stuff, which includes a deep space orbital module. So yeah, I think I've mentioned a little bit in some previous videos that I'm planning on using Apollo architecture kind of at first as I unlock and explore the technology, but I might move to cheaper and a little bit more futuristic looking Mark 1-3 stuff as I've kind of gotten past the early stages. So I definitely want to do a lot of this with Apollo architecture, even though it's going to be much more expensive. So that's kind of what our technological path looks like. The way that we're going right now is I'm planning on you'll notice that those are all things that help support our Mars mission, basically, and also for better deep space exploration. So that is kind of the direction that we're taking, and that is rounded out by the actual flight list that we have coming up. I have a uncrewed Apollo test coming up, followed by Apollo 1. Yes, that will be our very first Apollo spacecraft that we send up. So let's make sure that we actually have mission training on our first crew. So we're going to say we got E, P, and S. So that's engineer, pilot, scientist. Inessa, Edward Walters, and Donna Smith are going to be our first Apollo astronauts. So we will start that course, and they will be finished with that in 52 days, having them done and ready well in time for this mission. Fabulous. So that is carrying on. We should also look into proficiency with Apollo for Johnny Flores, Wanda Riley, Stanley Wood. Although, let's see, when is your retirement, Johnny Flores? 1980. He's still hanging on. Johnny Flores, Wanda Riley. I don't think I've actually ever put Wanda Riley up in a mission, which is my bad. But I totally had plans for her to go up on a Gemini mission, but like we're moving on. It's time to move past that. So I'm going to get her trained on that, and hopefully she will be ready in time to do some work on an Apollo spacecraft in orbit here pretty soon. We've also got another round of transfer windows coming up. So we have 3 of a brand new spacecraft, the Hermes-1, or the Hermes spacecraft, which is vaguely based on some of the later Pioneer Voyager probes. So I'll talk more about those when we launch them, but they're fairly easy to make, but I'm just kind of timing them down to their transfer windows. So plenty more really cool deep space exploration that we're going to plan to do. But so yeah, that's tech. That's what we're building right now. But let's take a look at missions. All right, so going back to our missions, you see that we have a Jupiter flyby and a Saturn flyby still in progress. They're on their way. It's happening. Mars landing that I need to complete sometime in the near future. That's what I'm going to do on the Mars transfer window that's coming up shortly. And then I also have taken the contract for Lunar Space Station, so I have plenty of time to get that done, and that's a nice big advance on that. And that is a space station that has space for 4 crew, and that's really it. That's really all you have to worry about. So that seems fine. We have all the technology that we need for that. We have a couple, like I said, we have a couple of new tech nodes that are going to be unlocking shortly that we can use. So I'm pretty excited about doing that. We also have missions coming up to send new crew to OrbLab-1, which is our little temporary-ish space station in low Earth orbit. And so I have a kind of a decision to make, whether I want to add to that space station or if I want to just throw that one out and build something new from scratch. The nice thing is that it's pretty modular. It has like an androgynous Apollo-era docking port sticking off one side that I could attach basically anything to, and we could really use that as the basis of the rest of our space station hub. But yeah, so we could do that. That would be a thing, or I could send up the new modules on their own as part of the new hub as I unlock those, because I don't have the like really good hub parts quite yet. There is a contract for Lunar Surface Outpost, which is really interesting. I'm not sure what parts I have that would be good for that, other than just putting the same station parts on the surface. But this would be actually fantastic training for the future. So this is something that I think I'd like to do sometime in the near future. I'm not ready to accept this contract yet, but pretty soon, because this is going to be another $3 million fund advance and gives us about 4 years to complete the contract. And yeah, that's just put 2 crew on an outpost for 30 days. And we have the technology to do that, but I would like to do moon-based stuff with Apollo architecture. So we need to basically go back up the tree of practice for Apollo before we get onto that. So that means low Earth orbit testing, lunar orbit testing, and then back to doing a landing with the new architecture as well as my old stuff. And we can still get a lot of good money with crewed lunar orbits. So if we can put a 3-person spacecraft into orbit around the moon, we have access to this crewed lunar orbit with 3 contract. And I don't see that it has a number of times that I can complete this, but it's worth 1.6 million just for sending an Apollo spacecraft around the moon, which is a pretty decent return on investment, no matter how expensive the spacecraft would be that you would have to do that with. So that's not so bad. And there's also crewed targeted moon landing, which means you'd have to land into a particular biome, which is really, really cool. And you can apparently do this twice, and that's worth 4 million each time we do that. So that's another 8 million funds, which is fantastic. So yeah, that's kind of the next step, and that's the stuff that I'm going to be doing with our Apollo as we follow on. Flybys and all that stuff. And yeah, that's about it. I think we're actually finally getting to the point where I can do some more ScanSat stuff, so I may do a little bit of that going forward. But what I'm really waiting for on that is better RTGs. So I'll deal with that in a bit. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to build, we have a couple different, there's a couple little upgrades that we can do for the VAB, but what I really want is our unlimited complex. And I'm going to name that SLC-1, Super Launch Complex 1. And that's going to cost us 2 million funds, and that is fabulous. And that is what is definitely going to be required to launch any kind of Saturn V type type vessel. Just kind of throwing things together with the technology that I have right now, because theoretically I have all the pieces. I could make a Saturn V, but what I came up with ended up being like 2,700 tons, which is a little bit bigger than the 1,500 ton pad that we have available to us. So we're putting this together, and that's going to take about 200 days, and then we are going to be able to launch the truly largest of vessels. Still waiting on new communications. The new research and development is about 6 million funds. Not super great, but that actually is the final upgrade. That's pretty cool to know. So 6 million funds to get the final upgrade to research and development, but we have a little bit of time. We have a lot of research that we can yet do before we get to that. I could, in theory, work my way up to spending 3.5 million on the vehicle assembly building, but I just don't see that that's particularly necessary. Astronaut complex is finished, and so is our mission control. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at on upgrades. So I think that means that we can use a lot of money on basically increasing our vehicle assembly building, which is going to be just fantastic. So let's get, let's just do this. Let's just buy 100 points, and we are going to dump a lot of that into rate 1 because we do want that to go pretty fast. There we go, and then we'll put 40 points into rate 2. So that, yeah, look at how good that does. So that gets us up to 8.8 build points per second in rate 1, 7.6 in rate 2, and really reduces the amount of time that it's going to take to build these spacecraft. So yeah, we're looking at now, this came down from like 100 days, a little bit more than 100 days or so. And that's good because these are just... the Apollo spacecraft are going up on Paladin 3s, I want to say, Paladin 3Bs. They're a new architecture that I've just put together that are specifically for launching Apollos, but they're essentially the Saturn 1B. Right, so that's like the 8 H1s plus 1 J2 engine as the upper stage. That they can't get to the moon by any stretch of the imagination, but they can put an Apollo spacecraft into orbit, and they're pretty big, pretty heavy, and the Apollo architecture is ridiculously expensive, and there's big multipliers on the total cost. So that's why that is starting to get to be such long times, and that's why we're spending a bunch of money on reducing that by assigning points to it. So yeah, there we go. That's kind of our plan for the future. Didn't want to leave this off on like finishing off a big milestone and then having everybody think that, oh, is he done? Is this it? No, we have plenty more to do. We are still marching on towards the moon, so I'm excited to keep pushing towards that. We are not yet finished. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.